Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today we are drawing Captain America in his classic design. None of that sort of very overcomplicated stuff that you tend to get. Just going for the classic. I was considering doing the scales, but I'm not going to just for the sake of time because the scales are highly time consuming. So instead I'm just going to go with just the flat blue. But yeah, we've got a bit of a pose to talk about here. I've got some stuff which I have to think about here. But yeah, posing is sort of what what our centerpiece is here, because I've got a bit of an interesting pose. There's a little bit of backgrounding I'm gonna have to do in talking about like expressions and stuff like that, because there was some stuff which I wanted to do with that, but I didn't end up doing. And then what was the other thing? Sort of perspective because of stars. That'll make more sense in a second. Whenever I show it to you. But yeah, posing is the big one. But yeah, we got to talk a little about a little bit of all these other little things. So yeah. Anyways, I'll roll the intro and then I'll show you what I have. So yeah. Okay, so this is what we're working with. As I said, we got posing to talk about. So I wanted to go for a more dynamic pose, something a little bit more, yeah, as I say, dynamic, a little bit more interesting. So I gave him the sort of low, or the arm straight down where the shield is, because I also wanted to obscure some of the design with the shield just to make my life a little easier. So I put the shield on a separate layer. Now, you might think that that's a bit of a strange thing to do, but the reason why I might actually use it that way is I also used a bit of a perspective thing on this. The same way I do on the face. I do a line down and then a line across just that I know where to put everything. I did the same thing on the shield for just the purposes of the star, because the star is a bit of a pain. Now, I mentioned before about perspective as it relates to stars. So here on his chest is in, so the star is sort of the arms of the star are being pushed outwards like that because his chest is in, and it's also a little low, so it's sort of stretching the star in a weird way. On the shield, I'll remove him for a second just so you can see it. On the shield, it's a case of where the shield is slightly like tilted back like that. The top is like tilted inwards a little bit because his hand is coming forward slightly. So this is technically the furthest out part of the shield. Now the rings on the shield don't necessarily illustrate that super well, but I might fix that later, I might not, who knows. But yeah, the star is the thing that's supposed to be selling that, because again there's a slight tilt to the shield here, because this is where his arm is there, and then so the shield is at its correct tilt, where the top of the star is facing his up his arm. So the idea being that whenever his arm is perfectly straight and down, that the shield, that the star would be perfectly aligned. But because his arm is slightly tilted outward like that, and it's slightly tilted forward, that the star is being pulled towards us a little bit like this, and then the bottom of the star is being pulled towards us, and then the top of the star is being pushed away from us. So the star has a bit of an odd shape to it like that, and again, because his arm is slightly tilted over that way a little bit, the star is also slightly tilted over that way. But yeah, so that's the sort of perspective stuff that I wanted to touch on. Some of the design stuff I suppose I should maybe touch on. So yeah, as I mentioned before, I've exempted the scales on the upper part of the suit just for the sake of making my life easier. So largely I'm going to be using probably very light blues in this. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the background. I might make the background red, I might make the background blue, I'm not sure. It'll be one of those colors, but it won't be much. There won't be much going on with the background. I'll probably do something similar to what I did with Psylocke last time, where I'll do a gradient of some variety. I might do a top down or a top to bottom gradient, where it's maybe blue at the bottom and then white at blue at the top and then white at the bottom maybe, so that the red pops a little bit more, something like that maybe. And then yeah, there was those little elements like that which I included, or which I chose to think about. But yeah, like so I've always found the boots on this design a little bit strange. The pirate boots is always what I think of them as, because yeah, they look like the sort of almost like, I don't know what you'd call these, but yeah, the like curtained boots. which are, yeah, they're like the pirate boots. But yeah, I tried to make the pose as dynamic as possible, where his leg is tilting, it is straight out like that, and then this leg is up. So it's, yeah, I think this is a pretty dynamic pose, all things considered. And then he's got his hand out like this, so it's the sort of, it sort of emphasizes the motion of the design, or the motion of the pose a little bit. I think, at least. Technically speaking, I think this arm should be further in, but I think it's fine. It's probably fine. Yeah, I do think the arm should maybe be a tiny bit further in, but it's probably alright. I might consider changing it before we get too far in. I might consider changing that whenever I go into the sped up dimension. We'll see about that. But something which I was also considering, just for the sake of making life easier, is because I already did the shield on a separate layer. I think what I was thinking of doing was just later on, just making this black. Just making the lines here black, and then I wouldn't have to redraw the shield, because I had to use the circle tool to do this. I had to use, yeah, this circle tool to do it, and it'd be a bit of a pain in the ass to have to try and marquee that properly. So I want to just make my life as easy as possible here, because I think this one should be quick. I went out of my way to obscure half the design at the end of the day, just that I could make it easier. But yeah, I think in theory this should be an easier one. Shouldn't be that bad. And yes, oh yeah, I nearly forgot about the expressions thing. So originally I wanted to go for a very sort of like a Jack Kirby sort of expression, of where he'd have like that sort of like broad kind of flat down mouth, of where he's like a really intense expression. And you can even see I started with that with the way his brow is. But I sort of altered it to be a smirk, because I felt like whenever his mouth was open, it sort of made his head look kind of weird. Because the thing is, whenever you're drawing a character with their mouth open, you need to bring their jaw down in order to make that look right. Because if you have a character whose jaw is still at the same level that it should be whenever their mouth is closed, it'll look kind of weird whenever they've got their teeth showing, but their jaw hasn't moved. Because even though I'm pressing against my jaw here to make sure it doesn't move, it's still moving. You can still sort of see my jaw moving out whenever I express like that. So it wouldn't look right to have him not having his jaw down and then all this stuff. And it felt like it looked better to have the smirk anyways. So yeah, I think I might alter that arm. But I also think I'm just going to change the color of the lines here on this, and just clean it up a little bit, and then we'll have our shield. I think that would be an easier way of doing things, rather than having to redraw the whole thing, because that'd be a bit of a pain. I did something similar on the Daredevil drawing I did a while ago. If any of you've seen that, you might remember. I had the rings behind him, the sort of like senses rings behind Daredevil, and rather than just redrawing them, because it was, again, that was also the circle tool, which is a bit finicky, I decided to instead just have it just change the color of the lines, and that was easier to me, so I just rolled with that. But yeah, that's sort of all the stuff I needed to cover. So I covered the expressions, covered the posing. I covered the posing to the best of my ability anyways. There's a few little alterations I think I'm going to make here. I think I am going to change that arm, because the arm just doesn't look right. His arm looks too forward for the fact that it should be in like this. It looks too forward. Like it looks like the more of the bicep should be showing than actually it is, because the bicep's tucked in like that, meaning that the rest of the arm should be further tucked in. You wouldn't really be seeing the bottom of the elbow whenever it's that tucked in. Whenever it's that tucked in, you wouldn't really be seeing that. So yeah, this shoulder is a little bit monstrous as well. I might taper that in a tiny bit, because that makes his shoulder look a bit huge. Especially given that, yeah, the ball of the shoulder is pushing forward, and then you would still be seeing the sort of expression, the impression of the back a little bit here, but it wouldn't be that bulbous. I want to avoid any sort of potential Rob Liefeldisms if I can. So yeah, I'll probably trim that in a tiny bit, and then we'll move on. Yeah, I'll probably trim that in a little bit, bring this arm in, and then I think we'll probably be good. There's a bit of a tangent going on between the shield and his thigh here. You might be able to see that there, where it's these two lines look like they're meeting, even though they shouldn't be meeting. So I might move over the shield, or I might make that thigh a bit bigger, just so that they don't interact. because they shouldn't be interacting. Those lines shouldn't be interacting. And I suppose you aren't going to be seeing most of this leg, so I may as well just maybe make the thigh a bit bigger, because otherwise you won't really be seeing it and it'll be getting cut off by the shield. So yeah, that's probably a wise thing to do. Okay, that's what I'll do there. I'll make that thigh bigger, trim in this shoulder, bring in the arm. Okay, so I'll begin. I'll speed all this up, obviously. So we'll do this, I'll do the details, and I'll be back to do the colours, which should be quick because there's only 3 of them. Anyways, I'll move on. Alright, that's our details done. So that wasn't too difficult, that was a pretty quick process all in all. The shield does help with that, because the shield obscures most of what's going on here. That was the sort of intention. But anyways, now it is time for our colours. I'll probably lay in, I think I'm pretty content with the idea of maybe having a gradient, maybe some sort of vertical gradient. I might also do a sort of dot texture in the background or something like that. So that maybe emphasizes the sort of classic vibe I'm going for. Maybe have the sort of screen tone in the background. That might look nice. That might work, I think. That would maybe be appropriate. We'll think about that. I mean, I'll do that in this section anyways. So, yeah. I chose to, yes, merge this, the shield layer into the core. Into just the details because I thought it'd be easier, and it is. It was significantly easier. I can still turn on the base sketch and you can still see everything underneath there, but obviously you're not going to be seeing that otherwise. You won't be seeing it again. Because I'll color over everything here and then that'll be that. I'm probably going to go for a kind of a lighter blue. Captain America's blue sort of changes. Sometimes it's a very dark blue. That's sort of what it is in more modern stuff, is it's a very dark blue. But I sort of prefer a lighter shade. I think a lighter shade looks a little nicer. Still a deep blue, but a lighter shade. Something a little less dull, I think is what we want. And yeah, something a little less dull, something a little less something a bit more vibrant. Because again, we're going for classic colors here, so we want vibrant, I would say. A nice bright red, a nice bright white, and a nice bright blue, I would say, are what we want. I don't think there's a huge amount I need to really go over here. A lot of the sort of, again, the details weren't too difficult, so I was able to kind of blast through that pretty fast. I think I think the screen tone idea for the background will be a good idea. Because there is actually a lot of this, which is going to be pretty easy. Because there aren't many colors going on here. I will have to color in his belt black. Because that's one of the things I'm looking at here, is that yes, his belt is black in this design. But yeah. So yeah, his belt is black in this design, so I'll have to color that in black. Yeah, I don't really think there's anything more I need to go over. Yeah, I'll probably do some sort of blue to white sort of gradient in the back. I might maybe have it be a circle, yeah, circular gradient coming from the middle of the screen. Maybe, who knows? We'll see. Doing the screen tone will be easier if the texture comes from there. I will say that much, rather than having to vignette it after there isn't necessarily any sort of natural darkening going on there. So yeah, anyways, I'll consider that. I'll see what we do. I'll just carry on with these colors, and we'll be back to do the painted shading. So yeah, anyways, I'll carry on. I'll carry on. Okay, so that is our colors done. That also didn't take very long. That was reasonably quick, just about an hour. And a lot of that was a lot of tinkering with stuff. Because there aren't many colors. Again, this was something that happened last time as well. Because there aren't many individual colors, they each take up far more space. So this is what happens. I end up having to go through with a fine-tooth comb and erase and fill in little tiny gaps that got left because I'm just sort of doing this with the pen the whole time. Just sort of scribbling in large spaces, large areas of space the whole time. And so yeah, so I decided to do a little bit of everything when it came to the background. So one of the things which I did, I had originally made two different backgrounds. Two different gradients. One was a more soft circular gradient, and then there's this one which is more of like a lens flare cross gradient. And I think I like the cross gradient more. And I also wanted to do the dots, so I put in the dots just as a very low opacity, so it still has that sort of screen tone, semi-tone look to the background. And I also included some birds, some white birds, because I think that's sort of fun and that fits the character. So I think that's sort of fun to have the doves in the background. But yeah, so now we have to do the painted shading. I'm thinking of having the darker side be over here and then the light be over here, so that I can have the rim light on this side. Because that makes more sense to me, to have a straight rim light going all along that side and then along this edge of the shield versus this side. I feel like it'd be more messy over on this side. So yeah, I don't think the painted shading will be very difficult here. I think that'll largely be something I can sort of blast through pretty fast. The only thing with the background that I maybe forgot to say was the fact that I did try and do some sort of soft erasing, some airbrushing to sort of blend the dots in to the sort of gradients and things like that. They already sort of softly blend into these darker areas of the gradient, but it's the lighter areas that I was more concerned about. I wanted the lightest areas to still be very light without having the dots, but I just didn't think it looked very good. So it's one thing whenever you're doing it with a softer gradient, but here whenever we've got a harsher cutoff between the two colors, it doesn't work quite the same way. So I decided to just leave it as just flat dots over a gradient that way. But yeah, next is the painted shading. I don't think I have much to really preface here. I already know where I'm going to be putting the darker parts of everything. I think I'll be having the darker parts of the shading be on the right, and then the lighter parts on the left. I think that's sort of what I'm going to do. And yeah, so I'll try and I want to try and emphasize the sort of bend of the shield a little bit, the sort of soft bits of perspective going on here, because I feel like otherwise it's not super obvious. But yeah, I think that's what I'll maybe try and do. I'll try and maybe re-emphasize the sort of shape of the shield. So I'll have to darken the sort of top edge like that, and then sort of have it soften into a lighter color around here maybe. But yeah, anyways, I'll move on. I'll do this painted shading, and then I'll be back to do the detailed shading and the light line too. So yeah, anyways, I'll do this, and then I'll be back. So yeah. Okay, that's our painted shading done. So now all we got to do is the detailed shading and the light line. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, now all we have to do is our detailed shading and our light line, which shouldn't take very long. I'm going for a slightly blue-toned darker color and a slightly red-toned lighter color. That's what I did with the painted shading as well, but it was a little less. It was a little bit more subtle because it's painted. So that's what's going to happen. But yeah, I decided to try and add in these little sort of lighter streaks up through the shield, just so that it has that sort of metallic look to it. And yes, so I'll be applying the light line along this edge. I'll probably go for a subtler light line, except for on the shield. The shield will probably have a pretty intense light line. But otherwise, yeah, for the most part, he'll have a bit of a subtler light line, a bit of a thinner one going along that edge of him. Because for the most part he has very soft shading on him, very soft lighting hitting him, so you wouldn't be getting a very intense light line in that instance. And I don't want to go over the top when it comes to that. So yeah, I'll be keeping things reasonably subtle with the detailed shading here. So realistically speaking, we shouldn't have much more left of this, meaning this is the quickest one I've done in quite some time. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything else I really need to go over. I think my background is properly done. I don't think there's anything more I need to really add to it. I'll obviously have to sign it and everything. That'll be technically a background feature, but anyways, I'll get to that later. Yeah, I think I'm good to carry on. I think I'll do this detailed shading and the light line. Then I'll be back to do the gradient maps and all the little final touches. But yeah, I'll carry on. And then, yes, I'll be back to do those bits and pieces. So yeah, I'll do that. is our detailed shading and light line done, which means that is basically us done. So, it's time to do the gradient maps. Now, I didn't have a color palette that I'd picked out beforehand that really worked. None of the color palettes that I really have handy seem to really work for what I wanted here. So, I'm just going to try and stick with what I was doing with the shading, of where our darkest color is a sort of bluer tone, like this, somewhere maybe about here. Keep it all very vivid. And our lightest tone was a sort of red tone, somewhere like here maybe. Right, let's see how this works. In theory, that looks alright. Okay. Yeah, that looks alright. It's very purple, obviously, but there's not much more I can do about that. Yeah, right, okay, that sort of works. That'll have to do. Let's make it subtle, reasonably at least. 60, I would say, will work for us. We still need a hue. We still need a purple hue. Or we need to sort of justify our color correction here in the first place. So, right, luminosity. This will revive our... Okay, that looks very classic Captain America with that kind of color scheme. Maybe we keep this one sort of high. 25%. You know, 30. 30% on luminosity. Does that look better above or below? Below is darker, above is lighter. I want it to be lighter because the white is sort of getting washed out whenever that's too low. Right, let's make another duplicate there. Let's make this one a color burn. That's going to make things very purple if I leave it too high, so let's bring that down to about 10%. 10% I think actually is alright on that. Because it's, again, we sort of need to feel a little bit of our color correction in place. It's funny how that's significantly more subtle, yeah, without the soft light. The soft light is really the thing that does it. Okay, that's alright, that works. I'm happy with that, reasonably happy with that color palette. Right, okay, so now I need to grab my texture. I would say we'll want to keep this a little more subtle. I don't think we want our texture to be too crazy here, because it'll sort of overshadow things if it's too intense, I would say. Right, let's set that to an overlay. And 20% seems acceptable. Because we want it to emphasize the blend of our gradient, but we don't want it to sort of make things anyway too like bleary or anything like that, too kind of blurry in places. Because yeah, currently it emphasizes our gradient in the background nicely. Let me turn off the dots so that's a little bit more visible for now. So yeah, it emphasizes our gradient in the background nicely, I think, because that's obviously where it's most visible. But I think with the dots on, it's a little bit more subtle, so that works well enough. It's all right, yeah. That is us, I would say, more or less. I'm reasonably happy with that. I think the thing that I'm most happy with is how long it took, which is to say not very long at all. Because I felt like I needed an easy one. It's nice to have an easy one every now and then. This was a fun one, pose was fun, the effects were not too difficult, the little effects and stuff like that that I had to apply weren't too difficult, the sort of little bits of perspective. The funny thing is, I do actually think the shield looks nice and 3D. Well, not like super 3D, but it looks rounded. That's what I'm getting at. Is it has a nice rounded look to it. It looks like an actual rounded object, something which sort of bulges out a little bit at the front, and then tapers in, and then tapers in at the top and the bottom, like a rounded object that curves out like a semicircle. It has that sort of look to it, which is obviously what I was going for. I think the musculature came out nicely. I feel like I didn't overdo it. Because obviously he's got a symbol on his chest, you sort of can't go too crazy with it, because otherwise then it'll become harder to see. So that's the thing, you sort of need to keep it a little subtler in those areas, just so that you can still follow what's going on. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. That was an easy enough one. An easy enough one to close out this this sequence of them, I suppose. Because the last few I've been doing have been very difficult. Very difficult, very time consuming. All I wanted was something easy. And I finally got it. Because the problem is, whenever I do the base sketches of these, they always take ages, even if they're not that difficult at drawing. Like even this one, the base sketch on this took a long time, even though the drawing itself wasn't that difficult. So I can't really gauge by the difficulty of the base sketch how difficult the drawing is going to be. I mean, obviously, if it's a particularly difficult base sketch, it's going to be a particularly difficult drawing sometimes. But in this case, it was a case of where, yeah, this base sketch didn't take any longer or any less time than the previous ones, so it's not a very easy thing to gauge in that respect. But yeah, so yeah, I feel like this one was refreshingly not that bad. And yeah, I think the kind of softer, subtler light line for the most part works here as well. But yeah, this has that nice sort of classic look to it, which is what I was going for. So yeah, anyways, I feel like I'm rambling a little bit here. So anyways, I will just say my outro and leave you. So yeah, just to prevent myself from rambling anymore, I'll just get on with this, say the outro, and then that'll be us. So yeah, if you liked the video, do whatever it is that you'd normally do, whether that be liking or not. I would of course prefer if you liked it, but I can't make you do that, so all I can do is politely suggest that you do so, which is, I believe, what I've gotten across. It's the same deal if you want to subscribe. I can't make you do it, but, you know, I can just inform you that the subscribe button is indeed below the video, and you may or may not wish to smash that like button. I don't know if that suits your fancy, but if it does, please do it. It does help, to my understanding. And if you have a suggestion for what you'd like to see me draw in the future, you could leave a comment, politely worded, or not at all. Just don't do it if you're not going to be polite about it. I'd rather not hear it if it's not polite. So, yeah. And yes, if you choose to watch the next video, I'll see you next time. So with all that said, that is us. I'll say goodbye and I will leave you. So, bye-bye.